But yeah, my name is Moadiah. Thank you so much for stopping by my page, and seeing what we have to say, etc. Thank you. Shout out to everybody who's gonna catch the replay. And I have a guest today, Natasha T. Brown, who is many things. I'll let her give you an introduction to herself, what she does, etc. And then we can dig into talking about what the topic is today. So the topic is about writing and publishing your book. And I love this because like I'm guilty of needing to do so. And Natasha is not somebody that just, she's not just like a publisher or not just somebody that's written a book. She's actually a combination of the two. So she has experience and expertise. So it's not just like somebody who's giving an opinion. It's actually somebody who has the skill set, has been there, can share some tips, etc. She has a number of things as well, which you can plug into to help you take that step forward. But I'll stop rambling on. I'll give her a moment to introduce herself, and then we can just kick off our discussion. It's really free flow, as as the Lord leads us. And guys, if you have questions as well, you can type them as you go along. If there's something that pops out, and as we're discussing, we'll address that. But we'll just give time for questions towards the end as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
But type them and then we'll go back and see in the comments, etc. So, hello, Natasha. How are you?
I am awesome.
Great.
I love talking to you, first of all. I just love everything you're doing and
Well, thank
so
you.
amazing. Thank you for having me on.
No worries. No worries. Do you mind telling us a bit about yourself?
Yes, so I'm Natasha T. Brown. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining and watching. I am an author, a publisher, also a ghostwriter, a book coach, and a missionary. Today, we're specifically talking about writing and publishing books. And I'm also looking at two screens. So if I go back and forth, it's because I'm looking this way and that way. So, yes, today we're talking all about writing books. And my book writing journey began 5 years ago. I've always been a writer, but I wrote my first book 5 years ago. And after that, after it began to get in the hands of publishers and ministers and writers, aspiring authors, people just began to ask me to help them write their books too. So that kind of brings me here today. I've been ghostwriting and book coaching. So I've coached about 200 or so authors, maybe more. And I've written about 30 books or more. I stopped counting at some point. But yeah, it's just been a really fun journey helping people tell their stories.
Awesome.
Mhm.
One thing I do love about you is how you describe yourself. So because we had a podcast, which
Mhm.
came out yesterday, so you guys should check it out. We'll talk more about that at some point. But you describe yourself as a communicator for Christ, and I think that for me was like, wow, I've never heard anybody say that. There are people I know who do what you do in some capacity, but I haven't heard anyone actually say that. So what does that like entail? Like, as what would you say? A communicator for Christ is? What's that description you give it?
Yeah, so a communicator for Christ is me. In 2014, I was going through a really hard time. And at that point, I had always been a communications professional, a publicist, a marketing professional, a writer. But at that point in 2014, when I was going through like really, really hard times, I just kind of dug in and just went deeper with God, and I began to just really spend time with him. And at that point he told me, like, you're a communicator for Christ. Just don't worry about the world. Don't worry, not care about the world, but don't worry about everything you have been doing. Because at the time, I was in the process of going through this really hard situation that ended up becoming my first book, this book right here, 10 Blessings of Betrayal. And I was going through this really hard situation, and people were threatening me and saying that, if I write my book, if I tell my story, no one would ever want to work with me again. My business would go to shambles because I had a PR and branding agency.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I just had to surrender. And that's when God was like, you know what, you're a communicator for Christ. Don't worry about what the world tells you. Don't worry about, all these threats and what people say about you. Just worry about what I say about you, and worry about communicating my truths to the
Mm-hmm.
world.
Fantastic, fantastic. I absolutely love it. I just love the very specific nature of what you are and how you let that define you. Because I feel often when we're sort of confused, or when we're a little bit not as purposeful, or it's a bit gray, we can seem to still be figuring out, and we can make bad decisions if we're not clear on who we are, clear on what God has called us to, etc. And that's also a process. Like, not everyone wakes up or is born and suddenly knows. It's a process of discovery. So I really love that. But before we go into like talking about the sort of book publishing side of things specifically, I think the thought of like why I was like suddenly, okay, let's do this. And I'm sure you have seen the same, because I know you've come back from a missions trip recently. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we can talk about that as well very quickly. But you come back from a missions trip. You've been, obviously you're home now. You're probably restarting things that you put on pause a little bit because you're on a mission trip. And with all of that, I can see you're pushing and encouraging people to write, tell their story, etc. And I just had this like real kind of nudge in a sense, because I saw that and I was like, oh yes, this is fantastic. And for me, this is something I need to finish off from a writing perspective. But also I just thought like there's so many things that people need to do. And this is an interesting season that the whole world is in. Like, everything has slowed down globally. And the different camps and opinions of what people have. I'm very much of the do what God has told you to do in this
Mm-hmm.
season. But I do feel, and not even a feel, like some things you're so certain of them. I do know that this is a period where we are in a sort of a reset mode, basically. And what comes with reset is also making up for lost time. So, there are things where we're meant to have done stuff in certain seasons, we're meant to have completed projects, taken bold steps, different things we're meant to have done. And we just haven't accomplished them because we've been fearful, we procrastinated, we've done all these things. So I do know for sure that this is a time where it's a gap where we can make up for time, and we have the opportunity to make up for time in the season. So it's important we do that. And one of the things I know people are meant to do is tell their story, write books. People think about it, they're fearful because sometimes the story isn't that, isn't doesn't seem like it's a good story at the end of the day when you finish it. But like the sort of all the lead up to it might rock a few boats, or it's like, how am I going to go about it, who's going to buy the book, why does my story matter, all these things. But I do know, I just sense so much that for scribes, like for people who write, this is a season that they actually need to be writing. This is a season where we should be connecting back with God, picking back things back up, and making sure we're doing all of that. So it's important that we tap into the resources and tap into what we have available to us to help guide us into that. Write the book or do what you need to do. Funny enough, before this live, I was catching up on some things, and I was listening to something, and I found out that Shakespeare wrote, I can't remember, a really popular book, because he had loads of really popular books, but he wrote whatever book that was while in quarantine, while there was a plague in X and X time. There was something else they referred to as well, not a book, but it was like one of these scientists or something came out of the quarantine season.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just, that preamble is really to encourage
Yeah.
people to not sit around on the things you are meant to do. Do what God says you should do.
Yeah.
Make sure you take advantage of the season.
Yeah.
So that that was my little preamble. But before we maybe again go into the book publishing, etc., you recently came back from a missions trip. I know we talked about it on the podcast, so people can go and listen to that. They should. But can you talk briefly about that missions trip, how that, how it's changed your life, etc.?
Oh my gosh. So I just recently came back from Tanzania, and I get so excited whenever anyone asks me about this missions trip because, guys, it was literally life changing. God did so much during this time and, during my time in Tanzania, but he really showed me his love, and really what I was doing was I was a theological educator at a Bible college. So pretty much I was working with students who are going to be pastors, evangelists, missionaries, and they are going out to the unreached people groups in Tanzania and around the world to share the gospel. So I was there teaching at their Bible college, training them and just teaching various courses, spiritual development, inductive Bible study, so many different things. And it was so powerful. And God really just spoke to me so much about, how much he loves all of us and just his love. And it was so evident, but also he showed me how love looks. Oftentimes in our world, we say, oh, I love you, or I love this, I love your hair, and I love this person. But God really showed me how really demonstrative love is. It's not just a word, it's really action. And as it talks about in, I believe, the book of First John in chapter 3:16, it talks about how love is laying down your life for your brother.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw that in the people's lives in the village where I stayed. And, people were so willing to give to each other and to help each other and to, chip in. And they were so hospitable. And so he taught me a lot, about hospitality and just having an open door and how that really does help build relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was just amazing. God spoke to me in so many ways. And I mean, Tanzania is near and dear to my heart now. People from Tanzania are actually on this live broadcast. I can see that now. And so, hi, friends and family from Tanzania. So they have a really special place in my heart. And, just me and my students, we still talk every day on WhatsApp and Facebook. So it's just a wonderful thing to do.
Awesome.
Everyone should go and just try missions. If you're a believer, just go on a short-term trip and try it. You'll see how God will really, really transform your heart.
Awesome. Wonderful. Wonderful. So shifting over to book writing, publishing, etc. Maybe when did you write your first book? And is that the book you just shared with us? Was that your very first book?
Well, it's so funny because right before that book came out, I had written an ebook, and I had been working on this branding ebook for years. And so I published an ebook at the same time as I published this book, 10 Blessings of Betrayal. But this book kind of caught traction because
Mhm.
it's a real story about my life. And, not my life, is a section of my life, 9 months of my life when my life went true. And, I was wrongfully accused of very serious crimes, and I had to really seek God and allow him to deliver me from that. And so I wrote that book in 2014. It published on February 14 of 2015. So 5 years ago is when that book came out, and immediately my life changed. God really pushed me into my purpose with that book.
Mhm.
And not only that, he allowed me to become a midwife and an incubator, a terminal of sorts for other authors. And so if you think about a terminal at an airport, everyone is there. These people from all over the world go to terminals, and then they get on planes, and planes take them to different parts of the world. And so that's how God uses me in my business, and even just in many of the things that I do. But he uses me like that in business as a terminal to help authors and entrepreneurs and ministers launch in different places. And so I saw that when I wrote my book, God, relaunched me. Now it's a nonprofit organization, a publishing and media company, hundreds of authors now that have been, pushed out. And now some of them are on their second and third books or speaking
Awesome.
career. So yeah, it's just everyone should write a book. Everyone has a story.
Okay, so in terms of your background in, just to kind of give people that visibility, into, so did you study, stuff to do with communication, to do with like, writing books, etc.? Was that what you studied in college to sort of help you develop that skill further in terms of publishing?
Actually, yes. I studied communications, was my undergraduate degree, and I had a minor in journalism. And
Mhm.
my master's degree, my first master's degree, is in professional writing with a concentration in teaching college writing. And then I have a Master of Divinity degree as well. So I did study writing. I didn't necessarily, when I went to school, I wasn't really studying the publishing industry. It was more so like journalism and television. And honestly, I really wanted to be on television when I was in school. I wanted to be a television writer, producer, and on-screen personality. And
Yeah.
that's what I thought I would do. When I got out of school, I just began to freelance in the communications industry. So, movie sets and television sets and newspapers. And I wrote a ton of things for newspapers. And so I was actually in the corporate communications world before I started my first business in 2009. In 2010, I went full time with that business, which was a branding agency. So, we created stories, many different platforms for various industries and our clients.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2015, when I wrote that book, that's when sort of things shifted. I was still doing branding, and I still do a lot of brand strategy now, and my company does as well. But we focus a lot of our brand strategy on publishers, or I should say authors,
Right.
and those who are writing books.
Awesome. Got it. Okay. So if somebody is, thinking, and actually before I ask the question, guys, Natasha spoke about, her a little bit about her experience and all of that, but we talked more of that about that in the podcast, which got released yesterday. So go to the Adia Talks podcast on all major podcast outlets, iTunes, Spotify, everywhere. The Adia Talks podcast, it came out yesterday, so it's our latest one. We had a series, and we were, talking about winning stories from winning women, etc. And she talked a lot about her background and all of that, which is it was really interesting. So you want to check it out. But now we're on to like book writing.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's just set a scenario of somebody who is like, oh, they feel like they have the story to tell, or they've had this like, oh, maybe I should write a book. Like it's crossed their mind. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and they've maybe written a few things down, but they're like a bit like, how can I even make sense of this? All the kind of questions that will come up in people's minds. What is sort of the first step into saying, okay, let's get this book actually written and, kind of move forward from there? So what is the first step of kind of getting over the mind set, or the mind, the fear and all of that with thinking, I want to write the book? That's kind of the first question, which, and closely linked to that, because you probably answered them the same way, is, why should someone feel, or why should someone think that their story is worth, sharing with anybody?
Yeah, I think you have to get over the second question before you make the commitment for the first one, to write the book. So you
Right.
have to know that your story is absolutely worthy of being told. You have to know that there's an audience who needs you. And a lot of times, again, people are launched into their purpose once they write their books, because the audience who really needs their story, who needs to know how they overcame, or what they learned, or their best practices, or how they survived something, those audiences are going to find you because of your book. So you absolutely need to write your book. And one of the things that my company just released, a author's bundle called Write What's Real. And
Mm-hmm.
in our first module in that program, it's a virtual program. Everyone can check it out in my bio. But in our first module, we talk a lot about mindset and how authors have to have the right mindset. Well, what does that mindset look like? It is knowing that you, without a shadow of a doubt, are an author, that your story is worthy to be told, that you absolutely are going to have people who are going to purchase your book. You even have to tell yourself that you're going to be a best-selling author, that people need your book, that God is going to anoint your mind as you write, that he's going to write it for you, that it's going to be the Holy Spirit flowing through you, and you aren't going to have to struggle. So we deal a lot with mindset with my company. We are a Christian publishing company, publishing and media company that really, really does focus on empowering our authors to have the right mindset to write, continue writing, finish, publish, and then turn their book into a movement. So in terms of what are you going to do when you get started? Hi, everyone. What are you going to do when you get started? You're going to know that you're going to make the decision that you're going to do it, and you're not going to quit. And then you're going to decide, when can you write best? When
Mm-hmm.
are you most creative? Do you flow better at night? Do you flow better in the morning time? When will you have the fewest distractions, or no distractions? And then you're going to plan it out. We are so good at putting everyone else first. We're so good at, having our planners. Everyone buys these cute little planners, or we use our Google calendar in our phones. Okay. okay, or our Apple calendars. And we're so good at planning our lives, but we always put other people and projects and things before our own vision, before our own dreams, before the goals that God has given us. So you have to plan your writing. So we have our authors plan their writing, take out your calendar, make a date with yourself. Today I had to follow my own advice. You know, I'm working on a book right now, and I realized I'm putting everything else, what I said I wasn't going to do, you know, I'm doing it. And so today I had to even step back on my own and say, okay, you know what, Natasha, you're going to wake up, you're going to spend time with God like you normally do. And then the first thing you're going to do is work on your own book. And then you're going to start focusing on other people's books and other people's projects, and the business will be fine for a couple of hours as I work on my own book. So I always suggest that authors write at least 60 to 90 minutes a day. If you don't have that time per day, then okay, what does that look like a week? Okay, it looks like 7 to 10 hours a week. So if you have to cram all those hours in on Saturday and Sunday, you need to have a plan to write your book. If book writing is your goal, if your goal is to write and publish, you have to put it on your calendar. And again, if the second thing I really want to recommend for any author is that you have accountability. What does accountability look like? It doesn't look like only telling, you know, your good girlfriend, because sometimes that person might have other issues in their life. They have other priorities, so they're not, you know, they might not keep a account of you. They might not check in and say, hey Mo, are you writing that book, girl? You said you wanted it to publish in June. Do you have a designer yet? Have you figured out who's going to be your editor? Who's going to help you? So you have to have accountability. So what does accountability look like? It looks like somebody else who is on your same journey, or somebody else who has been there who can push you. And so that's really one of the reasons why we wanted to offer our Write What's Real program, Mo, because it's so, we normally offer things like this for like a high price tag, okay? But because everyone is at home and we really, really want to push authors out, we have really just made it so affordable for anybody who is interested. And one of the things that it includes is lifetime access into our private coaching group. And our coaching group is a story coaching group. So it includes a ton of authors who are also writing their books. They're also on the same journey as you. So we have our group, and we meet, you know, everyone can talk in there whenever they want, but we meet together 2 to 3 times a month. And it's amazing because even yesterday we had a meeting, and one person, she's just starting, she joined last year, but she's just starting her book. And so she said, I have a question for everyone who's already started. How did you get started? And so people started chiming in, and they started giving her advice. And I didn't say anything at first. I said, okay, everyone else answer her question. And they began to chime in and help her. And so that is what accountability looks like. It looks like other people who care and who know how to give you good advice and to keep you accountable to your goals.
Honestly, you make an interesting point, because yesterday I was on a live with a friend. We were just talking about a number of things. You know, it was more like her interviewing me, and she was saying, how do I stay accountable? And I was saying, look, from my experience in life, I've had seasons where it's been like, oh, we have a group of friends, let's kind of divvy up and be like, and I found like with really good friends, accountability is difficult because they're your friends, want to like talk to you. They, you know, if sometimes accountability needs to be that voice that is like, are you sticking to the goal? Like almost like reminding you, and your friend is like, hey, how are you doing? And you know, if you just, you know, you change the topic easily and they don't really like, you know, oh, they've got their own going on. But you know, leveraging things like mentor relationships has helped me. So, you know, I have different mentors. So there's some mentors I would talk to about certain, they will literally check me on it. Like, you know, and for me, I'm like, I don't want them to check me. And I have like psychologically, I think it's groups like you said, or to have people that you can be accountable to who are not necessarily friends. Not that friends are bad, but you know, your friend just is your friend. They have, you know, other things to talk to you about. So someone who would actually keep you accountable is important. Would you say for like a first time author, So again, we're setting the scenario. I'm like, okay, I want to write a book. I've gotten over myself with the whole mental battle, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, write this book. We're in quarantine, all of that. And maybe say I set aside, like, maybe I'm going to write the book on Saturdays, or like 3 times a week, and I set certain days. Would you say, two questions I'm going to ask, should there be a sort of length of the book for first time author? Like, should you set yourself for it's going to be a 90-page book or a 250-page book? Like, you're a set thing. And then secondly, should you also have a time frame? So should I say, I'm going to finish this book by the 30th of June, and use that to sort of help with that process?
Yeah, so a lot of times those arbitrary timelines, they really, really discourage authors, because many times they don't meet them, and
Mm,
they're like, oh, and so they feel really bad after they miss a deadline, and then they don't, they feel bad about getting started again because of the potential disappointment. So what
mm,
I tell people is that, so I'm answering your second question first. What I tell people is that, if you have a specific goal for your book, in terms of maybe, like I've had clients who they wanted their book out by their birthday, or they
mm,
wanted to have books at a conference. Okay. So they would come to us, and we would make sure that they met that deadline for that conference or that birthday. But if it's not a deadline like that, just set a deadline, but know that you also have to check with the other people around you and really build it out. Okay. So that's why I always recommend, at least having a consultation maybe with a book coach who can help you build your timeline. But
mm,
in terms of writing length, like how much you should write, again, it depends on your goals. Okay.
mm,
Because if you are self-publishing your book, it's okay. Like, people are really starting to like shorter books now, just shorter reads, things that are easy to read and not like super long. Okay. So it's okay. It's better. It's okay, if it's not like super long. But if you plan on trying to have your book professionally, not professionally, I don't mean professionally, I mean traditionally published, like if you're going to go and get a literary agent who's going to shop your book to a publisher, they want to see certain word lengths. And so nonfiction, you're looking at like 50 to 70,000 words, or 60 to 80,000. Fiction, even longer, 80,000 words or more. Okay.
got
But for a first time author, if you're just a first time self published author, don't worry about that. Just write. And then when you get remember that you are not going to be the last eyes that look at your book. So you're going to have an editor who also looks at your book, or someone who's helping you develop the content, like a book coach or something. And so your editor should be a professional book editor, not just like your girlfriend who's good with words. I mean, some
yeah,
people, you can do that. That's
yeah,
fine. I'm not knocking it, because you have to start where you are. So I'm not even trying to like sound all high and mighty that you have to have like professional everything, because I'm more so interested in you getting that first book done. Okay. So that you can go on to the second and third book. But if you have an opportunity to speak with someone who is a professional in the industry, who can give you like, just the professional advice, so then
mhm,
you can, or the industry standards, and then you can decide. But for self-published authors, don't worry about your word count right now. Just write, and then work with your editor. Get your editor to really ask you really tough questions about your book.
interesting. Because I always wondered if with setting deadlines, I think it's kind of good sense of accountability, but I think
Mm-hmm.
you can also the creative process, because you could get into a position like, okay, I just need to do something, and you're not perhaps writing it as good as you would if you didn't put that pressure on yourself. So
Yeah.
I think you're right. There's a balance to be struck, with how you kind of having the deadline, whether it's necessary, and just making sure you have someone who's coaching you through that process and all that. Um,
Yeah. I
okay,
think, can I
so
say one thing about Yeah, I was going to say, I think you said the key word. It's balance. You definitely want to set deadlines for yourself and goals for yourself. However, they need to be reasonable. So some people say, I want my book done in 2 months. That sometimes that's not reasonable many times. And so you need to make sure that it's reasonable, and also know how long the process takes. How long is your editor going to take? How long is your book cover designer going to take? And so you have to build in the timeline. So make sure it's not just an arbitrary date, but if you do have a date in terms of you want your book out by a conference time or a birthday or a celebration, then that's a good date. Work on it and build your calendar, build the timeline so that the professionals that you need will also be able to work in that timeline.
But I would say, could you also do things like sort of run things in parallel? So I don't know, some people might think, okay, let me write the book, then I'll contact the person, then I'll do this and do that. Could you do things like, okay, now I know I want to write a book, find the book coach, whoever's going to coach you through that process. Then, if the book coach, if the kind of that unit doesn't give you everything, then start to also look for everything. So you're working with your book coach, you're building the content, etc. But you're also at the same time, you've contacted whoever you think is going to be a publisher, let them know about the book, roughly let them know your rough schedule, if there is one, and then also things like the book design, all those things, right? Like maybe start to get those in place so that it just makes it easy, and you don't feel like it's like I need one process to finish before the next one and before the next, because also you have to account for the people you're working with also have to fit it into their schedule.
Yes.
In terms of getting stuff done. Creatives are interesting as well. So sometimes, your book cover might take longer than you expected because creatives are big. I work with quite a few. But yes, I think, just making sure you can run things in parallel is a good thing as well. To show you do. Guys, I'm going to say that you can ask questions. So we'll take questions shortly. So please type the questions, then we'll just go back and look at them so you don't have to wait till the end. So if you do have any questions for Natasha on writing your book, please make sure you type them in the comments. So we're still working through this timeline of this individual. Let's call her Lisa. I don't know why Lisa just came to me. Lisa has gone to the stage where she's got a book coach. She's kind of setting some time, some progress, all of that. So she gets to the point where she thinks she's finished the book, right? So what is sort of the next step for Lisa?
Yeah, so I mean, everything kind of goes parallel, like you said. It should go parallel. So the marketing should have already started. Everything, her book cover should already.
So should the marketing? Maybe I'm thinking about it in like the sequence, but should the marketing, even like in the process of her writing the book, should the marketing already start, because she may not have a deadline per se that she set herself?
Yeah, I would say try to start your marketing, at least 3 months in advance, longer if you can. If you can go 4, 5, 6 months in advance, great. Well, what do you do at that time? You're building your email list. You might start to trickle out content that is related to your book content. So, I have a really good friend who talks all about love and, just good relationships. And so she's always talking about love. She's building her content. She's building her audience for people who want that, who want that content. So you want to start doing that way in advance. And yes, you were absolutely on target. As soon as you know your book title, guys, you can start to market your book and you can start to work on the rest of the process. So you know your book title, you know what your book is about. So you want to get your book cover designed immediately. You want to get your book synopsis or summary written. And that's really what you need to start marketing and pre-selling your book. You can do pre-sales, way before the book comes out, so that you're earning your investment back. If you're self-publishing or doing independent publishing, you can earn your investment as you are writing. Like I had an author, we wrote and published their books in a matter of 2 months, and we started writing and we got the book cover done the first weekend. They started selling the books the first weekend, and by the time the book came out, there was, I want to say, $8,000 in pre-sales for that book. So you can literally come up, like, just just really do well in pre-sale. So it's really important to do like strategize about it. So even if you don't know when your book is coming out, at least begin the process of starting to market if you can. And when you kind of are like really kind of close to the finish line, or you are, 75% done, I would say just make sure you're marketing at that point. Yeah.
And am I right in saying marketing doesn't have to be like, oh, I have a book coming out? I mean, it should be to some extent, but it doesn't have to be solely like, I have a book, pre-order my book, all of that. It could also be just, you could start with little things, as you say. So stuff like getting content. So you might say, okay, since I'm writing, maybe start to figure out ways to communicate, like use the platforms you have to communicate things maybe similar to your book, and maybe it's like stories or extracts from it, and kind of build your I guess your email list. And if you're going to be, especially if you're going to have an ebook, build kind of all of that, in terms of your visibility, and kind of start to engage with people, so that when your book you're closer to releasing your book, you have people you can tell, and people, it's important to engage. It's great to, like, I think some of us deal with, like, we have this idea, we have this fantastic thing, we want to get it out there, but we sometimes shy away from actually putting in the work to get that, actually let that share that story. And I don't think that comes from laziness. I think some of it just comes from getting over it in our mind, basically. And have to be proactive about how we go about doing that.
Yeah,
So
I want to talk about
yeah.
three. Oh, sorry. I
No,
want to share like three things because you mentioned marketing. So three things that you can do, like even before your book comes out, before you start to even tell people that you have a book. Okay,
I'm
three
taking
things that you can do. So number one, it's kind of like what you said. You can begin to use your platforms, and one, you want to build your email list. That's the first thing that you really want to focus on, building your email list. Well, how do you do that? You can release something where it's a tip sheet, or a newsletter, or something that you're offering people to sign up for your email list. So you can start to do creative things to build your email list. So focus on that. You can start a podcast or an interview series where you are interviewing people who are in your target genre for your book. So you might talk like we're talking right here live, and so you might be interviewing people who, like, if I'm your target audience, or my audience, Mo, is your target audience for your book, I'm a great interview for you, because then my audience will become your audience, and so if you continue to do that consistently, you can build your audience. Okay, so just start to partner with people to build your audience, people who are your target readership for your book. And then the third thing that you can do is establish some type of consistent communication in terms of whether it's a video, like you can start a podcast or YouTube or a newsletter or a blog. Okay, something, but don't try to do everything. Okay, because one of the things I tell people, a lot of ideas that you can do, right? But you don't want to do everything. You have to figure out what is best for you and your brand. Like a few of our authors are on here, and like Sharon, for instance. Sharon, I don't know if Sharon Angel is still on here, but Sharon Angel has a really amazing YouTube series, and so that is going into part of her book marketing. And she can start that, and people are already watching her YouTube series. There's more authors that we've worked with on here. Bashay would interview his readers, and he would have I think it was Motivation Mondays, and he would go on and talk consistently every week. And so his audience is getting used to him every week. So you want to basically establish some type of consistency on your social channels and your email list, and begin to build and communicate with your email list, because then people will be ready for your book when it comes out.
That's awesome. Somebody, I know we said we'll take questions, but I mean, so a friend of mine has asked, hello, Ruru. So she said, should you do a free, and we have the Zoom screen, so I'm just making sure, hello, Zoomers and Facebookers. So she's asked about like a free ebook, or what about like a free ebook, a mini one on the same topic as your book? Is that a good idea? That's a question.
I mean,
so like a snippet or something.
I think it's like, if you want to call it an ebook, fine, but I would more so don't think about it as like a free ebook. I would think about it as like maybe you're giving away a free chapter of your book. I mean, my thing is, I don't know. I just, I don't want to say what I want to say because I don't want to sound too harsh. Okay. But here's the thing. I mean, it's good to offer free content. Okay. And I think that that's fine. You can always repurpose your content. That is totally fine. But
Mhm.
you have to really think about the deeper strategy. Why are you offering a free ebook? Like, what is the purpose of it? Why can't you just offer them something like a free chapter of your book to get them interested in the book you're writing, or maybe tips or some repurpose content that you've used? Take videos that you've used online and write that up, like something that you've already given out versus like some totally new thing that you're just going to give away for free. At this point, also, I'm just very interested in getting people earning money on their books, you know, even if it's 99 cents or something, you know, just to, but it really just depends on your goal. But if you are going to make it free content, make sure you reuse that content. Like, don't make it just, you know, just free.
Standalone thing.
Exactly. It should be either repurposed content that you've used already or content that is going in your book. Okay. So it can be free, but you have to monetize it some way. So you have to be getting their email address, something that you want. And also, when you give away free content, especially ebooks, guys, you need to have as many links in your ebooks as possible. Not too many that they become like landmines so that people are jumping out of your ebook. But you have to remember that with ebooks, if you aren't distributing your ebook yourself, like on your own website, you'll never know who purchased it. So if you're putting an ebook on Amazon, Amazon isn't going to help you figure out who purchased your book. They're not going to give you an email list of every customer. So you have to try to use that email. This is why you publish ebooks, free ebooks. You use that ebook to really build your audience. So maybe
Right.
you're offering you're including links in your ebook to your private community, to your online, to your Facebook
Mm.
group. And so then you are building your Facebook community with people who read your ebook. So I don't want to say yes or no to ebooks because you have to think about the strategy behind it.
Important.
Everything has to be well thought out. And so
Mhm.
yes, you can do free ebooks, but don't just do a free ebook just to give away free content. Do it with some purpose so that you're building your audience and you're cultivating them so that they will buy your real book.
Awesome. Makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. So, thinking about like back to Lisa, and Lisa's done all these things in terms of like she's written the book, she's got her her book cover done. She started to build like do the marketing, etc. So she's written, so she's got the first draft of the manuscript. I think that's what's called.
Mm-hmm.
So she's got that ready. The next stage, I'm guessing, is that she needs to give it to an editor, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
what's the Karen? Sorry.
she can try to edit her book I mean, not edit it like, but she can do self edits first.
Yeah.
Okay, so make sure you're going back. When you write your book the first time, you should be rewriting and rewriting. So you're not just writing a book, you write and then you rewrite. The process is rewriting. Okay.
Hmm.
So once you get comfortable with your manuscript, yes, send it to an editor.
Okay. So that process of rewriting, is there a sort of set out process where you think it's best to, let's just say your book is 12 chapters, so you've written all
Mm-hmm.
12 chapters. Is it like you go back, or is it good to do like chapter one, I don't know, give it like a week, then go back to chapter one again, like break it up? Or is it good to like finish it, maybe even perhaps give yourself a break? Because sometimes, when we're looking at something over and over again, we're a bit skewed basically. So it's good to kind of
Mm-hmm.
come with a fresh pair of eyes. Is there like a strategy around that you would advise?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're really on point with what you said. You know, try to give yourself a break because if you're just reading the content over and over and over, the errors will become invisible to you, so you won't be
Mm-hmm.
able to see any errors that you have made. So what I like to do is just keep writing, keep writing, keep writing, and then like if I'm gonna write every day, for instance, tomorrow I might read if my book is like flowing off of each other, like every chapter flows from the previous chapter, then I might read what I wrote yesterday just so that I can
Mm.
get in my mind where I'm at in my story and then start writing again. But when you get to edit, exactly, just give yourself some time between your writing and your editing and go back after.
Yeah, it's a bit like any creative process because I'm thinking about it
Yeah.
from a musical perspective. Even with music, it's sometimes you might record something, you've done it all, you and the people who did it, have been there, and
Mm-hmm.
it's also good to have at some stage. It's good to have somebody who's different from the person that produced it mix and master because they're hearing
Mm-hmm.
it for the first time. Your
Yeah.
ears are kind of all the mistakes and all of that, and then even you yourself, it's good to give it a bit of a break, listen to
Mm-hmm.
other things, kind of clear your
Yeah.
head, and then listen to it fresh. So I think with any creative process like, music, writing, or whatever it may be, it's good to always kind of take a bit of a breather and then come back to it. It's always good. So assuming Lisa's read through her thing, she's happy for it to go. She's done the sort of round one of publishing her, or rather editing herself. The next
Mm-hmm.
stage, I'm assuming, is to then get somebody else to edit the book, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Okay.
it just depends on the quality of writing. She may need a copy editor that is, or even a development editor that's kind of rewriting a lot of content, or
Mm-hmm.
it might just be a copy editor that's looking at grammar and sentence structure. It just depends on the level of writing that would determine the type of editor that's needed. Some editors can do all of it. And so it really just depends on the type of writing. But editing would definitely be the next step. And after a few rounds of editing, track changes is really great for editing. And after a few rounds of that, give it back to the author, or you guys maybe can even collaborate on like a shared document service like Google Docs or something. And you go back and
Mm-hmm.
forth with that document and proofreading and just
All of
editing,
that good stuff.
proofreading.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. What would you say? Because I guess one of the services that Elohai provides is editing as well. Is that right? So
Yes,
what
we
is the
do.
for people to say they're looking for an editor slash a publisher? Like, what's the best approach to look for? So Lisa's like, I've done all of this. How can I now find the editor or the publisher, etc.?
Yeah, she can
Obviously,
always
you guys.
go and ask for.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can always ask for samples, or even ask what books they've edited before and read some of the previous books. Or I like most of our authors come to us by recommendation. So it's like, we might work with one
Mhm.
author and then they recommend us to all of their friends. And so recommendations are typically really good, to find a good editor. Or you can even just ask around, ask other authors, and then what they're looking for, of course, just the finished product. Back in the day, when I first started, I I remember that people would ask you to edit a certain sample a sample of their work or whatever, like the author would do that. But people, I don't think people would do that anymore.
Oh,
Or
so they're
not.
sort of testing out the editor. Could you do like chapter
Yeah.
one? And okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm.
and that was the case. Some people still do that. I mean, we really don't do that at our company unless we have to, but typically we haven't had to do that with our company. You can just, check out their previous work.
Mhm. And
Hmm.
edit. I know you guys do the same thing, but are editors typically people that help you with self-publishing, or do they tend to be different?
Um, if it's a publishing company, yes.
Hmm.
Some editors do know, the whole process. Some people have scaled down where they're only doing editing or copywriting. Not copywriting, yeah, copywriting with the W, copywriting. So some people are only doing those two, processes. But if you have a company who does everything, then it's okay if the editor knows how to do everything. It just depends on where you're at and who you're talking to. Hmm. So our company, we can do it all. We handle everything in the publishing process, and so we can talk to you about editing and get you a good editor, get your book edited, but then also go ahead and take it through the publishing process as well.
Awesome, wonderful. So I want to talk more about your first book and how that sort of what it did for you and how it started things, just to get people kind of seeing what actually getting to write your book, how that helps you. I know we have like Instagrams an hour,
Yeah.
annoyingly. So I think we actually have a few minutes because we started shortly after 8, my time. So we'll carry on, but if it does cut off, guys, we will come back and start again. I'm just checking. I think we've answered the questions that we've had in this. Um, Someone says writing boards sometimes may help. I think that's when we were talking, you know, like releasing content before your actual book comes out as well. So your first book, how did that sort of change things for you? Like how did you, and you talked in the podcast about how you got to the point where you knew you had to get the story out and write a book, and that's about a section of your life. But what did that do for you? Because it seemed like that was a sort of a propeller, if that makes sense, to other things that you've
Yeah.
done. So how was that received? Were you a bit, I call it scared, but maybe I can't find the right word, but were you a bit like nervous, scared of like getting my story out? Oh my God. And I know the story was quite, you guys should listen to the podcast, really. You should go to the Adia Talks podcast, listen to the podcast that came out
Yes.
yesterday. Natasha talks about, a bit about her story, a number of things, but were you a little bit like, because obviously it involved other people. So were you a little bit scared? Did you have to sort of manage that? Because now I think back, I watched a program, and it was about a lady who had a book coming out, and her family somehow found out about it, and they were upset because she was telling all these family secrets, and it was like, saying in our culture, we don't like talk about these things and all of that, but she knew she had to get the book out. So for you, how did you have any of that, and were you able to, did you do things deliberately to overcome all of that and manage that process?
Yeah, so funny thing, I talk about this sometimes, but I received death threats um, when, when I started to market my
Wow.
book. My name was slandered on social media. Basically, people were trying to, like, who thought that I was writing about them, were trying to discredit, like, my character and who I was. At the time, I owned a PR agency in the Washington, D.C. area. So, people knew who I was at the time. And so it was like, I had to really, yeah, it was like I had to swallow fear. I had to pray, and I was scared at first. I really did. At first I was scared, and I was like, okay, maybe I will never be successful again if I tell this story. And so I had to get over that. And what helped me is the weekend before my book came out, I went to a church service. Okay, this is going to sound real churchy, but I went to a church service, guys, and the preacher was preaching on First Samuel chapter 1, Hannah's story. And he was talking about how Hannah just had this prayer, and that prayer was like the game-changing prayer. And she was like, Lord, if you bless me with a son, I'll dedicate his life to you. He'll be given
Yeah.
back to
Yeah.
you. And so I just felt like the Lord was speaking to me because I was so scared and I didn't know what was next. So I went home and I prayed that same prayer, guys. I was like, God, if you allow this book to be a success, if you don't let me humiliate
Go get it.
myself, if you don't make it so that, people begin to like, just like totally like, just, I don't know. I was scared. Really, I had to overcome that, but I prayed that prayer and I was good after that. And immediately in 3 days, my book became a bestseller on 3 or 4 different lists. I sold 200 copies in less than 2 weeks of my book. I made $2,000 off of pre-sales, like immediately,
Wow.
because I did something really different that people don't do. But my best friend, she was like, you know what? Your book is so like, it's like an evangelism tool. You should do what those televangelists do. Just tell people that if they donate any amount, they can have your book. And I was like, what? And so we did it. And my book, the retail price was $10. And I was like, donate any amount. I sent emails to my list. It's like, donate any amount and you can have this book. And so people began to donate like $20, $100. And so I
Wow.
was like, like it's working. Thank you, Jesus. And then my girl who I knew from just being a publicist from Black Enterprise, she called me when I started to talk about pre-sales, and she's like, let's write an article about you. So they published 2 articles about me on blackenterprise.com. And, you know, it just, oh, someone was following me that worked at General Motors. And, you know, General Motors, I don't know if they still are, but they were the primary sponsor of the Stellar Gospel Music Awards. And so
Mhm.
they called and they were like, hey, we want you to be an influencer for the General Motor, for the Stellar Awards. And I was like, what? And so I was
Wow.
like, this is crazy. So they flew me to Las Vegas, and I had, like, you know, all expense paid trip to Las Vegas, like hanging with all of
Hello.
these stars. I was like 4 rows back, and, like, you know, Beyonce and Destiny's Child or Michelle and all of them were singing, and I'm like right there. Okay, and this is right when my book came out. So it
Like
was
this.
literally, God did, he answered my prayer. And then what he
Yeah.
did for me, I was, at the time I owned this company, and I felt like a slave to my business. I had been an entrepreneur full time, you know, for 5 years at that point.
Okay, it's kind of frozen.
Felt like a slave, okay, to my company. But God gave me a new business. He put my book in the hands of other people who started asking me to write their book. Me and my friend, we started a branding agency, and, you know, immediately we were bombarded with new clients who wanted to do things that
Wow.
were purpose filled, and everything changed. I started to do women's groups around domestic violence and trauma surviving, and so we started a nonprofit. It was just crazy. God is amazing.
Okay, we're going to talk more about that. We've got literally less than a minute left. So, guys,
Okay.
don't go anywhere. We're going to end this live. I'm going to start another one and round up our conversation with Natasha. So, this is part, well, the second part, because we had the Instagram video finished the last time. So, you know, after this, you can go back and watch the first part of our discussion around writing and publishing your book with Natasha T. Brown, who is experienced in this. She's experienced because she's an author herself, and she has a publishing company, or company that does, I would even say, a bit more than publishing, but they help you with that process of writing and publishing your book. So she has both the experience and the expertise. So, you know, and I'm, you know, I would say we, but, you know, we're definitely in the camp of making the most out of this time. And, you know, those books that have been on the shelf, or things that have been on your heart to write, to do, this is really the time to start to do them. So yeah, all good. So in the interest of time, I think we'll kick off. I know a few people will catch the replay, so I don't want that to be too long for them. So you were talking, we stopped where you were talking, Natasha, about the time where you were about to, well, your first book, you know, you
Mm-hmm.
knew you had to write it, you were about to publish it, and you received like death threats, and it was a bit like, you know, a bit of a rocky road, that process of like, I'm going to, you know, go ahead and write, you know, publish this book, and people thought you were going to write about them, all of that. And then you prayed one of the prayers in First Samuel where Hannah, you know, was desperately wanting a child, and then until her heart sort of turned, and she said, I'm going to give this child to you, Lord. You prayed that prayer for yourself, and, you know, from then, you know, you felt kind of lighter about the situation, kind of, you got a lot of favor. So you us about how you had raised some money, you'd raised money for the book even before the book was published. You'd had like people reach out to you, and you had somebody from GM, and you went to the Stella Awards, and that I didn't even know that side of things. So I'll let you carry on from there.
Yeah, so I mean, it just was like God was blowing my mind with just the favor, like you said. And
Mhm.
one of the other things that began to happen was, you know, in addition to like a ton of book sales, becoming a bestseller really fast, and meeting amazing people, people began to ask me if I could help them write books. So, and in addition to that, people began to ask if they could use my book as like a program. So I turned my book into like curriculum, and I began to speak, and
Wow.
yeah, I began to speak and work with different nonprofit organizations. So then we started to implement 5 and 10 week group programs with domestic violence, sexual assault, trafficking survivors, trauma survivors, based on my book. And so, like, in my book is really small. However, there's this is a book, but there is like in every chapter, there's what's called rebuilding section. So
Mm-hmm.
we people just go through self-reflection based on the chapters, and also like rebuilding prompts, like to how to rebuild their life after a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
So because that's really what the book's about. It tells my story, but it's more
Mm-hmm.
so of how to allow God to rebuild your life after a tragedy. So yeah, so we began to do that. I linked up with amazing women, survivor of domestic violence, all over the country, and also some people from Canada. And we started a domestic violence coalition where we were just
Wow.
coaching women out of domestic violence situations and really just ministering. And so at the same time, you know, my hunger and thirst for the word just began to like increase. And all I wanted to do was like talk about God. All I wanted to do was like pray for people to be healed and delivered. And so God really just used this book. Like, really, it was the obedience of writing the book and publishing the book, even while I was scared. Because the way that I started writing, guys, I had been wrongfully accused of pretty much attempted murder. And so I was facing 25 years for crimes that I did not
Wow.
commit. And so even after, you know, things had settled with that situation, I was still bitter, and I was still on some, oh, we on get back mode. Like I'm a church girl now, but back in the day, I was like not playing no games. Okay. So I had friends and I'm like, yo, we about to go, and you know, we have to go. Like, I was on get back. Okay.
Yeah.
But then I prayed and I was like, Lord, how can I feel better? Like, how can I get my mind in a different place? I'm so angry. I'm so bitter. I don't know what to do to get over this. And he just said, right. And I thought I was writing, you know, a hate letter or just a journal entry about what I had experienced. But as I started writing, God began to minister to me and show me everything that he had done while I
Mm-hmm.
was going through quarantine for 9 months. And while I was like, you know, on this, just chilling, you know, just out of the public eye and just allowing God to do what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And he showed me the blessings in the betrayal. And so that was how, like, once he showed me really what was going on and how he allowed me to grow in that situation, I couldn't be bitter anymore. I couldn't be broken. So it was from a place of surrender that allowed that book to do everything that it has done, you know?
Wow, there's so many things you said there that I just was, blown by. I think, firstly, God really did blow blow your mind,
Mm-hmm.
all of that. So, the process of writing that book sounds like it was therapy for you in that season, like you needed to get the story out there. But I'm just so amazed with with writing the book, there was favor that you received of just, all these things, doors opening up for you. But even more so, it's the people and the lives that were connected to you being able to get that book out there. So your book became more than just a book. You turned it into curriculum. You were able to sort of, hook up with other people and help people, like build a community to help people who've been in a similar situation to you. So that is just incredible, because often very self when we in this stage, the first stage we mentioned, so guys who might be joining for the first time, but in part one we were talking about kind of the getting over yourself with writing, with writing the book. And sometimes we're like, I can't do it, my story, this is going to be tough, who's going to want to listen, I'm scared, all of these things. And we sometimes, and this might not just be with a book, this might be with anything, especially creatives, we're very like, it's our baby, it's like it's from us, right? So it's like, I don't want anybody to criticize it, I don't want anybody to do these things. And often there are people that are connected to that thing that we need to do, and when we sit on it, when we're not doing it, we're sort of delaying their process. And there comes a point where God is like, I need this done. We say God's will be done, his will be done, but he will just find another vessel to do it through if you don't at some point rise up to the challenge or rise up to what he's saying we should do. So just to encourage anyone on here, it might be a book, it might be something you're thinking about, it is beyond you. It's just beyond, it's not about you or about that, that telling the story about the fear that you're feeling as an individual. It's beyond you. There are people who connected to that story. You might not even know them immediately. It might be in years to come. It might be like, somebody picks up your book in 5 years and they're like, we need it to be a curriculum, or we need to do, so they're just those things you should bear in mind as you go through that process of, getting to the point of writing your book, etc. So that's so excellent. That is wonderful. And, with all of that, I guess that is what opened up the door for you to even, start helping people in that process, and kind of the whole, where you explained your communicator for Christ and all the other things you did. That's where that started. I know you did some ghostwriting. I don't know if you still do that. And you worked with a number of people. I don't know if you can share anybody you worked with and the examples, or like some stories that you shared and how successful they were, etc.
Yeah, I don't like to mention a lot of the celebrities, but I have worked with a number of celebrities. One
Yeah.
person whose books that we published, though, that I will mention is James Fortune.
I was going
This
to mention
is
to let you do that.
yeah. So we worked with James Fortune, the gospel artist, on his book Destiny Derailed, and success stories. I love the first time author success stories. One of my favorite authors that we work with is a doctor named Dr. Tiffany, and she was an osteopathic physician, and she was confined to a hospital before she wrote her book and launched her brand. And when she came to our company, we helped her launch her brand, write her book, and she immediately began to speak all over the country. Now she's
Wow.
like the director of like the Osteopathic Physicians Association. And we have so many success stories like that, where when people write their books, they literally are propelled into purpose. So I think that God gave me a really great example in my life so that I can show people that it is possible. The book that I wrote, guys, it didn't just go to just here or there. My book has been all over the world, even in prisons. I had a prison chaplain call me, and he was like, hey, one of the inmates in our prison saw an article about you in the Baltimore Afro newspaper, and they want to know if we can use your book for our in prison, Christian ministry. And I'm like, yes, sure. So you never really know. You have to write your book, guys. This is a game changer. It's literally a game changer. And don't just write just any old, you can write books after books after book, but allow God to write through you. I tell people all the time, it was the Holy Spirit who wrote that book, because some of the theology in this book, I wasn't even on that level theologically to think
Yeah.
that way. So God was literally downloading things in me. Even the fact that I was a ghostwriter, I ghostwrite books, and I don't do it as much as I used to. I was in seminary for 3 years, and I think that God really used ghostwriting for me while I was in seminary to kind of get me through, because I was already in the books. I was already studying theology, and really, so that's mainly what I wrote about for our clients, who a lot of them were pastors or televangelists. And so one thing that he did is really the Holy Spirit wrote a lot of those books, all of those books. I really can't say how I was able to write like 15 books in a year. That's just like crazy, and be in school full time and run a business and a ministry. It wasn't me. And so I'm not even up here trying to say I'm so great and look at me. No, I surrendered to God. And I literally, when he said write, I said, okay, let me write. And I thought it was just something that I was writing in a journal, but we never know how far one step of obedience will take us. And so it's so critical, guys. If there's been a book on your heart, if there's a story that you have to tell, don't wait another day, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know. I
Absolutely.
get passionate
No,
about this.
honestly, the thing, sometimes we're praying to God for things, we're believing, or incredible things. We've been, we receive them by faith. We're just praying, or we're thanking him, and a lot of the times I find that it's really in our hands. God has given us the tools already. He's given us the instruction, but we can't make the connection. So we might be praying to God about, I don't know, something. Let's just say we want a new job, for instance, right? And God is saying the instruction that God has given us is literally like, write this book. We don't, there's no direct of the surface, there's no connection between the instruction to write the book and wanting a new job, because it could be like,
Yeah.
I don't know, in a field, it could be like you're a scientist or something, right? There's no connection. But writing that book could be a door open to meeting someone who knows someone who is the head of whatever. So there's always these links that we don't quite know the full picture, because we're not meant to know the full picture, but it's literally like, take the step. It's like when he told Abraham leave, right? He didn't know like what's gonna happen. Even when
Mm-hmm.
he told Abraham to go and sacrifice, it's like, okay, I know
Mm-hmm.
God will
Mm-hmm.
provide, but I'm gonna take the step and do that. So just to encourage us to ensure we take those steps. It might seem like you don't know like what it's actually gonna do, but often the obedience, the steps that God tells us to take, the instruction is linked to that thing we have been believing him for. Like, it's all aligned. Our life is all kind of intertwined. It's not meant to
Mm-hmm.
happen in isolation. So
Absolutely.
just want to round up. If anybody has any questions, I know we answered questions from the first session, but if you have any questions, please do type them in the comments now. But while you're doing that, we're just going to ask Natasha if you want to tell us. I know you've spoken about Elohai and the stuff you do, but just want to share, because I know some people weren't on the first session, but just share exactly what Elohai do and how people can get in touch with you, how you can help them, etc.
Absolutely. So our mission at Elohai International Publishing and Media is to really advance the kingdom of God through books, media, and mission. So we tell stories that change lives. So if you are an author, the way that we can help you is, we can help you go through the entire publishing process, whether it is helping you write. We co-write with people. We do a lot of book coaching and book development, editing, design for interior and exterior of the book, just getting you through that publishing process. We also do a lot of classes. Right now, we have a really amazing digital sort of course that will take you through some of the steps and also give you access to our private coaching community. So we offer a lot of learning opportunities, as well as a story coaching community that doesn't just work with authors, but we focus on writing. It's called Write, Speak, Increase. And so, we do believe that the more you tell your stories, the more doors you'll open for yourself. And more so, the stories you share will determine the doors that you walk through. So you can share stories, whether it's video, speaking, through books, but the stories that you decide to tell about your life and your career or your journey will determine what doors open for you. So we really try to get our authors and clients and even organizations. We do a lot of brand strategy and communication strategy for organizations and ministries as well. So I know that was a lot, but we work with authors, we work with business owners, and also ministries and missions organizations, just to try to move them ahead.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's wonderful. So, guys, if you are thinking about writing a book, get in touch with with Elohai International, I believe it's
Yes.
called.
Mm-hmm.
Get in touch with Natasha, Elohai, to see what stage of the process they could help you with. It might be all of it, or it might be some parts of it, etc. Someone's asked the question, how do you go about finding illustrators for a person who does not draw, especially for kids' books?
Yeah, so there are illustrators for kids' books. And so if you want one, you can definitely reach out to us. Our email is hello@elohai.com.
I'm gonna.
Elohai, yeah, I'll put it in here. So you can definitely reach out to us. We have illustrators,
Okay. Yeah.
and but you need a children's illustrator basically, and you can find illustrators. I mean, even if it's not through our company, a lot of times, it works for us. Sometimes we ask for recommendations on Facebook and things like that. Then there's a couple of companies like Upstart or Fiverr and things like that that offer, they have services with creatives. But you
Yeah.
can definitely just reach out to a publisher like us, and we can definitely help you.
Awesome. Wonderful. Great. Are there any other questions? Wonderful. We can answer that question. Do you have any sort of, I would like us to actually pray for people. I don't I kind of felt we should do that, but maybe perhaps before we do that, do you have any sort of closing remarks or tips that I leave people with?
Um, uh-oh. Can you see me? Okay. Yeah,
I
I
can see
think I
now.
want to talk more about how you perceive yourself, all of you future authors. I just want you to remember that um, even if you don't believe in God or Jesus, you know, this is still true for you. But there's a real enemy whose desire is to kill, steal, and destroy. And so oftentimes our doubt, our self doubt, our lack of confidence, our inability to focus, are going back and forth, you know, wavering. We're going to write the book. We're not going to write the book. It's often just the enemy trying to keep you from what God has already ordained for your life. And again,
Mhm.
I didn't like, he really tried to derail me by having me caught up in this situation. And, you know, I take a lot of responsibility for it, for what I went through. But I'm glad that, you know, Romans 8:28 was still in effect for my life, you know, that all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord, right, and who are called according to his purpose. And so you have a purpose. If God has put a book on your heart, that is a part of your purpose. And so the longer you procrastinate, the longer you doubt yourself, the longer you question whether or not your idea is a good idea, or if there's an audience for your book, the longer it is that you delay your process and you delay, you know, really walking into that place of purpose and promise. And so definitely just recognize the trick of the enemy is to keep you derailed and to keep you distracted away from what you should be doing.
Awesome, wonderful. That is such an excellent point, and definitely something we need to bear in mind, when we are going through those processes of having doubts or questioning ourselves, or even when we've gotten over that and we are in the process, there may be things that are meant to derail us, that are obstacles that come our way, but, we just hold on to what we know is the vision we've been given by God, or the vision we have in our hearts, basically, and
Mm-hmm.
use that as a marker. That's hold on to that, basically, and to help you stay focused on what you need to get done. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't think there are any more questions right now.
Mm-hmm.
Conscious we've been on air, and I don't take any more of your wonderful, precious time on this Saturday afternoon, your time, evening, my time. But I just want to thank you so much for this time, for sharing with us about, the process of writing, publishing books, etc. If you are on and you have a friend who I encourage you to share this with them. Instagram keeps this
Yeah.
on for 24 hours. So I was trying to save it and see if I could do it on YouTube, but that didn't really work. But anyway, Instagram keeps this on for 24 hours. So make sure after this straight away you share it with that friend, because I believe there would be nuggets and things on there to bless you. If you didn't catch the first part, please go back and watch part one
Mm-hmm.
of this as well. And I just encourage you to use this time wisely. We spoke about it in the first part. Use it to do the things God has set you to do. This is no doubt a reset period for everybody. And we just need to tap into that in whatever way we're meant to do. So, of course, I encourage rest, but make sure you are doing the things that God has told you to do. You're making up for lost time, all of those things. Even if it's a case of you're spending time getting over those mental barriers,
Mm-hmm.
you're really enriching yourself with the word. You're speaking the word over yourself, because those are the things that would help you
Mm-hmm.
actually understand who you are, the identity, all of that. So I don't know if Natasha, if you want to pray as well, but I'm just going to quickly pray for everybody who's
Okay.
on.
Yeah.
And want to, we could do that afterwards. But Father, we just thank you so much for this time, to just share, Father Lord, and pour out, oh God, for the gifting you have given us, us speaking, and those who are on as well, Father. I thank you so much for what you have placed in their hands, what you have placed in their hearts. And I thank you so much for the ability to be able to come and pour out, Father Lord, from the well that you have given us, Lord. And we know the well is a well that doesn't run dry. So, Lord, we
Mm-hmm.
know there's more behind this, and there's more that you would reveal to us, Lord. So I pray for everyone who's connected to this, who even watched part one, who will somehow catch something. They could be connected to someone on here who would tell them about something that will help them. Lord, I pray that, Father, you would open their eyes, that you would open the wells within them, Lord, to begin to pour out, to begin to write, to begin to be scribes for you, oh God, to begin to do, what they need to do to get over the mental barrier, Lord. I just pray for restoration of identity. The
Yes.
people have their identity restored, to understand who exactly they are, and there's no question about it, that the enemy will no longer lie to them, oh God. We speak over their mind, that their mind is renewed in you, oh Lord, that they will have a new revelation of who they are, of the words you have said over them, of the book in heaven about them, oh God, begin to walk according to that. I pray for complete alignment in this period for everyone who catches this, oh God, that there would be such a realignment of their destiny, where they have gone wrong, where they have turned. Father, begin to help them to realign to your perfect purpose for their life, your perfect will for their lives, oh God. And we just thank you for everyone who's connected to them, everyone who will be blessed from the books, from the podcast, from music, from whatever it is every creative pours out, Father Lord. We thank you for everyone connected to it, that they will be set free and they will be delivered, that every message that comes forth from everyone connected to this, oh God, will be a life transforming thing. It won't be about something that just gingers us and makes people feel good, but it will be life transforming, because Lord, you are life giving, you are life transforming. So Father, we thank you, children. We thank you, Father Lord. I pray for even anyone who's struggling in their relationship with you, anyone that doesn't know you, Lord. I pray that somehow they come to the knowledge of you, that the seed that is sown in their heart now will begin to bloom and blossom, oh Lord. So I just bless you. Thank you for Natasha. I thank you for her company. I thank you for what you have done and everything you're doing, the favor, oh God, and even that favor that she received from just taking that step. I just pray it for everybody who is, on here, who's thinking about what they should do concerning their book, that favor, doors will begin to open, ideas, strategies, initiative will begin to flow, Lord. So I thank you so much for everyone. I thank you for Natasha, Lord. I bless you, Lord. Thank you so much, Father, for everything, in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. I don't know if I have anything further to share.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for just tuning in. I would just encourage you to share this in the last video. And I want you all to also check out Moadiah. Check out her podcast, the Adia Talks podcast. We had a really amazing episode that came out yesterday where we talked a lot about missions and just so many different things. So check out the Adia Talks.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I was just saying, check out Moadiah, check out the Adia Talks podcast, check out Adia's album, Your River. I love that album. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on here live with her. I do love it. And then also visit the link in my bio, guys. It has a ton of things that we have going on. And I want you to make sure you're subscribed to the email list at Elohai International.
Natasha, can you hear me on Instagram? Because I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't. Huh. I think I hear you just on no, I can't hear you either. That's really weird.
What is she going on?
I can't hear you. Not on Insta.
Can you hear me?
I can only hear you on our Zoom. I can't hear you on Insta.
Okay, I can't hear you, but we were gonna round up anyway, so okay.
Okay.
I can hear you. Are we still on Zoom? But I can't hear you anymore on Instagram. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if other people can hear you, but Natasha was just saying that you should check out the podcast. We did a Dia Talk podcast. We had an episode with her. We talked about her mission trip and all sorts of things. So guys, go and check that out. She talked a bit more about her story as well, which is great. And you should get her book as well. And she was also saying, I'm not going to, that's the book, exactly. And then she was also saying you should get some music that really blessed her. I'm quite shy saying
Mo's music.
But she was saying, so I'm also a musician. I'm a worshiper. So she was saying you should get some of my music. So you should go get some of my music. It's on Moadiah on all digital music platforms, actually. So she was saying how she liked Your River, which is my latest project. So Go download it. Hope it blesses you and all the great things it does. And hope it brings revelation to you, because it's really, music from, straight from what God poured out. It's a spontaneous album, and then that time. So I really, every time I listen to it, I know it's not me, if I'm honest, but, I pray it blesses you. But thank you so much for joining this. I know a bunch of you are, Natasha's followers and all of that. So thank you so much for taking time out. I hope it blessed you. If you have any questions for me or for her, or even might not be about writing a book, might just be general about knowing more about God and all of that, DM us. We absolutely do not mind. So reach out, all of that good stuff. So thank you so much again. Take care. God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your evening. So I'm going to say bye to the people on Instagram, and I'm going to face the people on Zoom. So thank you so much.